Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show. Glad to have you today. Hope that you'll spend time with us as we discuss today's topic. When you join us, if you would, please let us know where you're joining from so we can acknowledge you and then, of course, look forward to hearing your comments. My business partner, Anton, is actually tied up with some training today. And so it is just me. So your comments and questions are even more important today rather than just to hear me talk on and on. And our topic for the day is about patience. And as always, we are addressing questions in relationship to stress. And is patience a factor in our levels of stress? And I believe it is. And excuse me, patience is something I think that is misunderstood, and it's also challenging to come by. And in fact, thus the title Patience, I Want It Now. And it's something that we struggle with on a regular basis. But if you're going to be a leader and if you're going to manage stress well, being patient is something that is a challenge. Good morning, Zaid. Glad to have you with us today. And there is even some question about whether patience is a virtue or is it a learned skill. And so it is rather interesting to consider those possibilities because we need to consider those as we understand about patience and how it factors into our situation, our life. And if you will bear with me, I am working on technology. Technology always keeps life interesting, doesn't it? And good morning, Sharon. Glad to have you with us as well. And glad to have you back and hope that you're feeling better. Hope so anyway. Anyway, patience. Uh, One of the questions is it a virtue? And or is it a learned skill, or could it be both? And so, one of the things that I've learned recently, and I think it's good perspective, is patience isn't just about waiting. Okay. Patience is about waiting, but there's more to it. To be successful and have character quality or skill of patience has to do with our attitude while we wait. And we know that we're growing in our skill and or character as we begin to learn how to wait with a good attitude without grumbling and complaining. And the more we can develop in that fashion, the better. When we're not patient, what happens? Well, when we're not patient, we get upset, and that comes in different forms. And that form could be anger, be frustration, irritation, uh, sadness. We not get what we want when we want it, and we get sad, discouragement. So there's a lot of aspects of not having patience and how it factors into our lives and something that we need to consider. So, first, I would be curious to know from the audience if you think that patience is a virtue, or is it a skill, or is it both? And get your perspective on that. And also, I'd love to hear your perspective on whether our attitude matters while we are waiting patiently, or as long as we are waiting and giving it time, are we being truly patient? So, a lot of different aspects to this. And you're also like to hear your stories about what happened when you patiently waited. I know one of the things for me, as I have learned patience, interesting, as I've gotten older, I thought patience was going to be easier to come by. And I have come to realize that in some ways it is, but in other ways it isn't. That age doesn't necessarily guarantee patience by any means. Welcome, Rick. Glad to have you with us. And like your comment that my faith has taught me patience. Indeed, for me also, and it is a challenge that faith can help us in, to realize that we can wait and that we may not need to get upset or anxious or unstressed over having to wait. And good morning, Lydia. Glad to have you. And Lydia makes the comment, the patience is testing our fruit of the Spirit. Indeed, it is a byproduct of, as Rick talked about, faith. And having that faith and being able to rely on that faith helps produce patience in us. And as we consider patience, why? Why does it matter if we're patient or not? Love to hear your stories. For me, I have found a couple of things happen when I'm patient. One is that I am protected from making bad decisions and making those decisions that are hard to overcome or undo. And so just having patience quite often makes a difference in that regard. And Lydia makes a comment, and I agree. While waiting, we develop long suffering. Yes, we get to, sorry about that. The comments are moving faster than my mouse. The comment is that we develop long suffering or perseverance. And given the way things are in our world today, I would suggest perseverance is a key to surviving and even thriving. I think that that long suffering or persistence is part of our resilience. If we can be patient, we can be resilient, we can overcome, because we're willing to wait and see what happens. And one of the topics that we talked about several months ago on Wisdom Seeker was that the hardest answer to our prayer quite often is when we get the answer of wait. Not yes, not no, but wait. And that's a challenge. And so patience can affect our level of stress. And as we learn how to be patient and we learn to wait and wait with a good attitude, then I believe that we can, as we develop the long suffering, that our stress levels will actually go down, because we appreciate the value of the time, but before we get the result of what we're looking for. And as a leader, it's especially important, because the people that we lead, that we work with, are at different points in their growth and their development. And learning that they may not be where we are, and therefore they may not see and understand the things the way we do. And giving them time to develop and grow, and part of that as a leader is to help them develop and grow, is a factor in those relationships. So again, patience. Is it important? Yes. Or is it worth developing as we go along, even if we start out as a patient person? One of the characteristics that I have been told is that I have a great deal of patience. But what's funny is that that patience can vary in accordance with circumstances. I am very patient when working with people and uh, dealing with people and getting along, but are people in person. Now, when I get in a car, I still to this day struggle with patience with other drivers, and I am learning how to uh, have patience, if you will. And for me, part of that learning process is considering context and considering motivation. See, what I find is when I become impatient, it is uh, part result of assumed motivations, especially patience with people. And the assumed motivation is that either they're making a conscious choice to be a problem, annoying, irritating, and or that they are motivated by selfishness and that their behavior is simply because they don't think of anyone else but themselves. And when I have chosen to think through that process and consider that I don't know what their motivations are, and then when I also consider that there are times unintentionally that I do some of the same things, when I start considering that as part of it, then I begin to learn how to be patient. And for me in that area right now, it is trying to be patient and wait and just persist. I'm still working on the attitude part so hopefully I get to a point that the attitude follows as well, because when we have the right attitude and we're willing to wait, then we're more at peace and more at ease and less stressed as part of that process. So, again, I'd love to hear from the audience your stories about learning patience or how you struggle with having patience and what you do to try to grow in that area. What are the ways that you help yourself to grow, or are you like me still searching in some ways? And if so, share about that a bit. I know that I have another challenge, and this is something I've shared over time, and it's an area of patience, and it has to do with communication. I need to have patience in communicating, and if you will, best expression of that is listening. And our lack of listening quite often has to do with our unwillingness to be patient with the person we're communicating with. But when we learn and grow and become patient in our communication, we have to then, or byproduct of that is that we listen more, we observe more. And I can tell you from experience that when we learn that level of patience in the area of communication, it not only saves us problems, but it saves us embarrassment, because I know I have had many times where I was impatient in communication and I would say something or ask something of someone that as soon as I did it became self-evident, or it became evident that I wasn't listening and missed it. So again, patience in our communication is another one of value. Let's see, Sharon comments that she agrees with Rick about faith having taught her patience. And I think that's again, there's a common theme there and the value. Rick makes a comment, I sometimes ask God to give me patience. Before becoming a Christian, it wasn't a strong point. Yes, I can appreciate that our faith helps teach us the value of these areas of character. And I think it also helps us because as we have faith, our vantage point changes from just about us to begin to see others. Good morning, Atif. It's been a while. So glad to have you today and look forward to hearing your comments and questions as we go along and discuss patience. So I'm curious how many of you think that patience is virtue or patience is a developed skill, or is it a combination, and what your experience in regards to it? Are any of you naturally patient? Do you have that inclination, if you will? And as a result, you're considered to have that virtue. Would be curious to know your thoughts in that regard. So, patience. Is it important? Yes. Does it affect our stress level? Yes, it really does. Because as we are patient, again, waiting, but waiting with a good attitude, it changes things. Even if we are willing to wait, but not have a good attitude about it, that can actually increase our stress. So it's important to really look at this from all sides. And the question or the comment in the title of today's show, I know I have at times prayed for patience, but asked God to give it to me now. And that indicates part of the struggle that we have. We want it, but we don't want to have to wait for it. We don't want to have to go through the development process. And we were talking yesterday on Wisdom Seeker about thankfulness. And I think that the act of being thankful also factors into our level of patience. And Anton and I use the Bible as an example on a regular basis. So you shouldn't be surprised that there is a part of the Bible that talks about this. And James, it says that we're to count it all joy when we encounter various trials. In other words, when things get challenging, when things aren't going our way, our first step is to be thankful. And it may not be that we're thankful for it, but we learn to be thankful in it. My apologies. My nose is itching this morning. But as we are thankful and we endure, we develop persistence and patience as a result. Let's see here. Atif offers a comment. Patience is definitely a virtue, but the question to ponder, are we exercising patience by choice or by force of circumstance? Oh, that's a good one. And I think sometimes it's both. I think that there are circumstances, or as the Bible puts it, adversities that come in our life. And we rarely have any choice but to develop that patience or persistence. And that's when it's hard, and that's when our attitude can be a challenge. And I think the goal, though, is that we grow into a place where we are patient by choice. And as we begin to do that, be more proactive in making that choice and choosing to be patient, then the better it is for us. It's certainly better for people around us. And I think when we begin to make the choice to be patient, that at that point is when our stress levels decrease. Because again, when we choose to be patient, it reflects that we have possibly a change of attitude or mindset. And it's real important that we learn how to have that right mindset and attitude. So I hope that answered your question, Atif, that I think that it's both, but our goal is for it to become a choice rather than a requirement, if you will. Zaid makes a comment, says if you as a leader and manager, as you're dealing with people, will face challenges, like if you introduce a new training, and as we know, different people catch new things at different speed and level of comprehension. As a leader, if you only measure at the speed of your faster learner and don't have patience for the rest to catch up, don't have a backup plan for those that don't catch up, then you will be dealing with major problems and create problems created among team ranks. Indeed, the value of patience is that it recognizes that that people are at different places in their development, and learning to be patient with those different levels is definitely a great choice, and it's certainly a virtue as we develop it, but it becomes a key in helping our team as we go along. And I still maintain, along with helping our team, it helps us lower our stress levels. And part of it is, as Zaid has indicated, is that we have to anticipate it. Part of the patience is going in and going, okay, this isn't going to happen fast. We're not going to resolve this quickly. And going in with that attitude and mindset helps us to then choose to be patient. And that helps us to see the value and all that comes out of being patient. And so, again, patience is a really important key as we work, especially with relationships, but it factors into other areas. If we're doing a project and we are anxious to get this project done, but we do so at the peril of our patience, then it can cause our stress levels to go up. As we go in and we begin to set realistic expectations of ourselves, of others, of the circumstances, it will help us very much so to keep our stress levels down and the stress levels of others. Rick makes a comment that in our "we want it now" society, patience may be another lost art of communication. Yes, I'm afraid that at this point we have lost that. Another way that people put it is in our microwave society. We no longer willing to wait to get things cooked or get it hot or whatever. We want it immediately, and the blessing and curse combination is that we have ways that we can do some of those things. But what we have to realize is that just because we have a microwave doesn't mean that we can or should cook everything instantly. And so, we want it now is costing us as a culture. It reflects in how we work with each other, both in production and in relationship responses. Let's see here. Lydia makes a comment. Through adversity, patience developed and matured personal growth. Yes, that is the value. And that adversity, the right attitude or right choice to make going in is to be thankful in those circumstances. We may not have the feeling of being thankful for it, but we can make the choice to be thankful in it. And when we do, it will help us develop into a stronger person. It will help us develop that virtue to a point where it becomes a choice and not a requirement. And so we really need to consider how we can grow in patience. And a question for you guys, can we affect our level of patience by our choices? Can we choose to grow in patience, or do we just have to wait and deal with it through circumstances and wait for that to come along? Now, by the way, life and circumstances will give us plenty of opportunity to learn to be patient if we let it, and if we're prepared and open to it indeed. Let's see here. Zaid makes another comment, says, also, if the leader's stressed out about things that will reflect on the people he or she is managing and leading, they will start to show stress as well, and the cycle never ends. Indeed, that is so true. If we live in a team culture where everyone stays stressed and it's not managed well, then it does indeed cycle and spiral downward. And one of the things that Anton and I have talked about over time is our organizational ecosystem, and how we as leaders have to learn to help manage not only our stress, but the stress of the team, and how that is a factor, and learning how to manage those things in life and in our team that cause stress. Let's see. Sharon says that I've just said it all. For myself, I have all the patience in the world when I used to teach people. I loved to help people learn and grow and achieve their goals. I lose my patience with nasty people or people hurting others on purpose, and I can't be still then. Through the years, I've learned to have more patience than I used to have. Sometimes silence is golden. I have, through the years, learned to be more patient. God's helped me through a lot of circumstances. And, oh my goodness, let me make sure, circumstances, and he's given me more patience. Well, that's good to hear, Sharon, and appreciate your sharing your story in that regard. The more we learn to wait and be patient, indeed, it is better for everybody. And I like your comment about silence is golden. Sometimes the best way to be patient, especially in relationships and especially in communication, is learning to be quiet, learning to do more listening and less talking. And when we do that, it factors in a positive light. One of my favorite sayings, and I believe this is attributed to Abraham Lincoln, and I have learned, unfortunately, the hard way over the years, says that it is better let me try that again. It is better to remain silent and thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt. And I believe that when we learn the principle, the concept of silence is golden, that we not only help ourselves to wait and get an answer, but to maybe learn how not to look foolish unnecessarily. Let's see. Zaid comments, they tell it's the price of convenience, but convenience is a choice in my view. Indeed, we make choices on whether that we are going to focus on convenience or if we're going to focus in other ways. Convenience is fine, and I think we all enjoy convenience, but when it becomes our first priority, then I think it causes us to not have the patience that we need either with other people, with ourselves, or with our circumstances. So, learning not to be driven by strictly convenience is another factor in the concept of patience. And when we learn that convenience is not always best, we begin to grow and we find ourselves making better choices. Another convenience, and boy, this one gets a lot of us in trouble. Before, we used to buy things primarily with cash. In other words, the money we had. And then along came credit cards. And credit cards have a lot of value if they're used well, and certainly convenient. But the problem is that a lot of people focused on that convenience to a point that they get themselves in a lot of trouble. And that's a case where convenience, it can actually hurt us. One of the things that I've had to learn over the years is not spending, and learning to make choices about spending, including patience and waiting. I know in our society and the way things are marketed that we, and in fact, we're coming up on the biggest time of the year where this becomes a major consideration, is Black Friday and deals. The deal of the century. You'll never have it again. You got to do it right now. And what's interesting is, before, when this first started, Black Friday was a given set of time frames, and it was limited to a given set of items, and even that, a given number of items. Well, and at that point, everybody said, well, I've got to do this now. It doesn't matter if I have to pay for it on credit, whatever. It's such a great deal, won't happen again, so on and so forth. Fast forward to today. I find it interesting that I'm getting notices from different retailers about how that Black Friday is not just Black Friday anymore. That's already started. And if you want to order it now online, you can get it and go pick it up and not have to wait in lines at the store. And so again, this idea that we've got to respond quickly, conveniently, or lose the opportunity is not true. And it will create in us, if we allow it, it will create in us stress over, think about it, people getting up. I know I've observed personally family members getting up at all kind of crazy hours of the day to go to take advantage of Black Friday sales. And by the after lunch of that day, they're so exhausted. And you hear the stories of people pushing and shoving and fighting over getting the last one and so on. A lot of this is a reflection of our lack of patience and our willingness to wait for the best option. And the best option is not always, I would even suggest quite often, not the most convenient option. Although we want it because we become accustomed to it, sometimes the best option is the one that we wait for and where we choose to be patient. And one of the things that helped me learn about purchasing and patience in that is that when I have learned to wait on things, after waiting for a time, I realize not only shouldn't I buy it, but I don't need it. It seemed like it at the moment, but as I waited, it took on a whole different look to me. And that is, not only do I not need it, but I don't want something else to keep up with. And so the value of patience in those situations is great as we learn to wait about making choices. I know one of the things, another way that patience pays off is, rather than reacting to people and circumstances, we learn to respond. And one of the simplest ways to learn how to be a responder rather than a reactor is just counting. Count down from 10 or count to 30 or something. And that act of waiting or patience pays off because it causes us to learn things, learn more, get context before we open our mouth and say something that's either foolish or hurtful or both. And it comes back to being patient with our how we react or respond. The goal being, rather than reacting, which, to give you context for my use of the word reacting, that is, somebody says something or does something, and immediately we say or do something in response. That's reacting. Whereas if we learn patience and choose patience, somebody says or does something, and we wait. And it may only be a few seconds. It may be days, depending on the circumstances. But when we do that, when we are patient in that circumstances, quite often we avoid making unwise choices and doing things that will cause a problem in our relationships. And back to kind of picking on our leaders, because leaders have a greater responsibility, that becomes especially important as we work with our teams. Patience, and I believe it was Zaid that talked about the different places that people are at, and giving that time to unfold without pushing it. So, and I just noticed Rick's comment, and it's a good one, and that is silent and listen have the same letters. And yes, I think there is value in noting such things because it indicates life and how we are able to see patterns and reasons to make the wise choices. Zaid comments, funny you mentioned that, Kevin. The other day I was thinking about online shopping. Now they're trying to get you the product to your home the next day, or if you're a member of the inner club, maybe getting same day. Back in the days, we could just walk into a store and have a quick chat with the store clerk and grab our things at the same moment of purchase and take it home. We're coming a full circle, but losing the human connection element, and it's the price of convenience in the dynamic. Yes, I get that, Zaid. You're right. It is funny how even in the world of acquiring stuff that we have become so convenience driven. And yes, there are certain online retail outfits that will pander to that convenience, and they have made a lot of effort to allow you, if you order it in the you're in certain cities and you order something in the morning, to have it by the end of the day. And again, I enjoy convenience like anyone else, but the question that we should ask ourselves is, having that convenience the most important thing, or is it about learning to grow in virtue of patience, and, as Zaid pointed out, to maintain connection to other people? All questions that we need to consider as part of this process. And as we connect with other people, by the way, it helps us to develop patience, and it helps us to grow in character. And that's part of the value of those relationships. One of the comments that I've heard said, and I agree, that people come and go in our lives, and some of them come into our lives for us to work with or help. Others come into our lives for them to help us or to encourage us or whatever. And sometimes it goes both ways. But those inner connections, those inner relationships help us to grow in patience and character as part of just the natural process of it. And so we just need to really consider our level of patience. And if we're naturally patient, then develop it, and to be patient and help others as they grow and develop that skill. And I can assure you that even the most patient of us are not patient in every regard and every circumstance. And so we have room to grow in that, in terms of the skill of being patient. So I hope that as we consider all this, that we make it a priority to develop the skill as well as strengthen the virtue of patience. It benefits us, it benefits those around us, and it helps us, I believe, make better choices, because quite often when we wait, we find that our initial response may not be the best one. Our initial choice may not be the best one. For example, when it comes to buying things, maybe waiting will save us from making a poor choice. I know personally of people that have made big purchases, and because they were impatient in their approach, they made poor choices, and they discovered it over time. And so the virtue of waiting, and then the value of waiting with the right attitude and mindset because of stress, all factors in. And so again, patience. Let's be willing to wait. Let's hopefully grow to a point that we choose patience, which as a result will allow us to lower our stress. When we can wait with the right mindset or attitude, then things are much more calm and much more peaceful. And it comes back to making the choices to be patient and to treat patience indeed as a virtue. And virtue can grow. In fact, in this area, the virtue of patience will grow with our correct choices. And one of those key choices is thankfulness or gratitude. And so it's really appropriate that we talk about that this week as we're coming up on for the U.S. And I believe there are other countries along with the U.S. that celebrate a day of Thanksgiving. And as we move into this time and we learn about Thanksgiving, and then a byproduct is to be patient with each other, things will go a lot better. And I know that in our families, there are struggles because we become impatient with each other, and we set expectations based on that impatience. And as a result, we lose the opportunity to recognize that among our family, our friends, that maybe someone has grown as well and they've learned, and then it changes the dynamic in a positive way in our relationships. Zaid makes a comment, for me, the human connection is more important than this virtual convenience. I agree. It's really funny because, of course, in the fast food industry, drive-throughs are kind of become the greater impact. I know years ago that drive-through was, generally speaking, less than half of the business that these fast food restaurants did. Now, I'm pretty sure that drive-throughs have surpassed the percentage of business versus going inside. But one of the things that I have started doing, and I've found that it is encouraging, beneficial, strengthening, whatever, however you want to look at it, to make that choice of not going through the drive-through and do the sort of virtual experience versus going in and interacting with a person that you have to communicate with, that you have to make your request and pay and so on. And I think it's worth considering for us that want to develop the character, the virtue of patience, to make those choices as well. Be willing to wait a little longer to get what we want and get out of our cars and interact with people. I think there is value in that for us if we want to grow in patience. And it all becomes a part of the choices we make. Yes, some of us have patience as a characteristic of who we are, but we can all develop patience and it become a part of who we are, especially as we are aware and mindful of the choices to be patient, and we start seeing the benefit to us and others of being patient. So I hope we've really helped you think through and consider that patience is indeed a virtue, but it's also a skill that can be developed and practiced and become a habit. And that as we learn to be patient, and when we talk about patience, again, not just waiting, but waiting with a good attitude, then there is great benefit in doing so. And as we've talked about, for a leader, patience and exercising that patience is so very important in order to truly grow and build our team, because our team members are at different places in their development, and being willing to wait for them to grow and strengthen and become more able to do whatever they need to, or be at the production level they need to, then as we're patient, we set up a better set of culture and circumstances for them to grow into. And we, as we learn to be patient, again, waiting with the right attitude, it lowers our stress levels as well as the stress levels of our team. All part of what we need to consider, and how that we can indeed learn the value of patience and exercise it and learn how to use it to lower our stress. So I think we've gotten this topic across, the value and virtue of being patient, and the fact that we can, if we're not naturally patient, we can grow in it. And we can do so by our choices and by making it a priority. And one of the simplest ways to do so is to respond rather than react. And simplest way to go from reacting to responding is deep breaths, counting, whatever, because rarely do we need to react, because rarely are we making in our lives, especially day to day, life or death decisions, even though at times they feel like it. And that's, again, part of our culture. So thank you, everyone, for our time today, and look forward to being back next week. And look forward to having Anton back, because Anton contributes so much to our conversations and to help us learn how to be effective in managing stress. Remember to follow the hashtag HumanSOS, because our desire is for this to become a movement so that we can affect our world, our culture, in a way to help us live in a more humanly sustainable fashion. And that involves a lot of things, but including lowering our stress or managing it well, which means maybe not lowering it, but approaching it differently or making choices differently. So thanks everyone for being here. And I hope that you'll join us back next Tuesday for the next episode of the Human SOS Show. And join the movement by following the hashtag. And you can also go to our website, perspectiveforce.com. And I believe it's back up and functioning. I know we had some technical issues, but it's there. And you can even take the assessment, stress assessment, to begin to identify root causes of your stress and begin to take 10% steps towards overcoming it. So thanks, everyone. God bless. Have an amazing week, and I hope we will see you back next Tuesday. Take care. Bye.